Alright, so we're going to start our animation. So this is what I'm going to start with for my animation. So it's a bit more challenging than a typical one. But the important thing is that we have some nice motion here, and because, you know, obviously he falls, it's a bit interesting slash funny in there. So I got this from YouTube. I put it through After Effects. It was actually the Ultimate Fails compilation, and I had to crop it down to just this one video that I found, or this one section of it. And I added the little time thing here just by adding a solid, and then going over to Effects, Text, Time Code, and then on there I just chose the frame number instead of this default one. Change the size, change the color, make sure I can see it, turn composite on original off. Alright. I also had an adjustment layer for the blurs for when he's showing his protest that he fell to the camera. And then I rendered it out. So I have two things I rendered out. One of them is a movie. That way I can reference this and I can know exactly I'm in Maya. I'm on frame 0. This is what it should look like on frame 0. And then as I get further, I can see what frames I'm at there too. Okay. I'm going to focus on just this part here where he falls and hits. So right when the sound stops, right there. So right about 4 seconds. So it's a good amount of time to have just like a nice little quick animation to, you know, he jumps, falls, boom, it's over. Okay. And then I also have a wave file, and this wave file I can actually bring into Maya and use as a audio clip inside Maya to help me time things up too, and to test things. I mean, the timing is going to come a lot from this movie, but the wave file just helped me see if everything is working the way it should be working. Okay. And the way I did the wave file is just when you go to After Effects and you're rendering stuff out, instead of QuickTime, I chose wave. Okay, and this is at 22 kilohertz, 22,000 kilohertz. We don't need anything huge, and I just brought that into Maya. Right. Now another important thing to kind of note is what the frame rate is here. If you look at the frame rate of my YouTube video, it's 25 frames per second. Okay. So because I'm using this in frames, I have to kind of keep that in mind too, that if I do this frame for frame, then I'm doing this at 25. Okay. Typically, if you're doing something like this for a project, you would shoot your own video and you would try to shoot it at the same resolution, or the same, not resolution, same frames per second as your end product is. Okay. So I'm going to do it at 25. It'll be fine. I can always adjust it later if I need to, speed it up, slow it down, whatever, once I have all my keyframes in there. I did save this composition. That way, when I'm done with my other stuff, I can just kind of drop it in here. So let's get into Maya. And I'm just going to, I already created a project, so I'm just going to set my project to that folder. And I set the project. Now I'm just going to go and open up my Andy character set setup file. And remember, this is the one that has all the character stuff set up on it. So it's basically, this is ready to start animating. Okay. So I'm just going to save this as Andy rig. And then this is jump fail, we'll call it. Alright, so you're going to have your own video that you're going to use, but that's the one I'm going to use. Okay, and I'm going to bring the audio file in, so I can just go to File, Import. And inside of my Movies folder is where I put that. So if you look down here, now I have this audio file. So as I hit play, okay, I'm not going to hear anything right now, because if I hit play, I'm at play every frame. I'm not in real time. So I'm going to go over to my key next to the key and hit this preference and change this to real time. Now you'll see that my real time is set to 30. Remember that we're doing this at 25. So I'm going to go to my settings, change this to 25, go back to my time slider, real time 25, good. And then just make sure all my other stuff is set up. More than enough frames there. So now when I hit play, I can hear the audio, And there it is. Okay. Now another thing I want to do is, because this is kind of dependent on having a bit of prop to it, I want to build those simple props. They don't have to be complex. They just have to be essentially placeholders for where the stuff is going to be happening. So I'm just going to move my stuff in half-ish. I'll hide that for now. There we go. All right, and then this is going to be, let's say this is our front view here. I like to go and create the resolution and set the stuff up so that everything's kind of locked in where it needs to be. So this footage is 1280. I know we're going to render these at 960 by 540, so I'm just going to set this to 960 by 540. And that way it gives me a kind of a place marker. This is already the same proportions where I could just kind of line stuff up at. And I'm going to move some things down just because of the kid's head is cut off at part of it. Alright, so this is going to be the ground. And I actually put this on the ground. And let's see, let's get some rails in here. It's going slow. And you see it's nothing complex, it's just, very simple shapes. I'm just going to take my Andy character, put it up here. And it's not that I'm testing this out for size, really. Like exactly size. But I want to see the scale of it, make sure that, this looks like something that could be a good jump. I think these probably need to come up a bit more. There we go. Okay, and I'm getting it from that side view because that's kind of like the view I'm rendering from. So I want to make sure that this view above the other ones, looks the best. All right, maybe a little bit lower. There we go. All right, so we'll try this, and then, if we need to make adjustments, we can make adjustments. Okay. I could also grab a still from here, drop it in as my background image, just by going to View, Image Plane, Import Image, drop it in as my background, and then line it up that way. That would work too, but I don't really need to do that. Okay. So let's rewind this to frame 0. Run frame 0 here, frame 0 here. And then what we're going to do is go through and set up the poses of the thing. So what we want to do is try to find the major movements of this and set those up. So here, let's go back to frame 0. Okay, so this is our just starting pose, so we'll set it there. And then our next pose is going to be here where the hands are out. So at frame 20, where the hands are out like this. And my next pose is going to be say 38. That'll be our next pose. And then that'll be a pose there, 49. That'll be a pose there at 60. Say that's a pose. There'll be a couple poses here just because of how intricate this is. Let's see, make that a pose. That a pose. And I'll have a couple poses in there too. Okay, so let's take it one pose at a time. I like watching videos in reverse. Alright, so we'll go in here, we'll make sure that we're on. That's what I get for shrinking my stuff. I'm going to do the whole Andy character set. Okay, everything Andy. because we're not focusing just on the legs or just on the hands here. We're focusing on everything. We're creating the essentially we're creating the pose for the entire thing. Let's move Andy a little bit closer to the edge. Okay. And I'm going to lock this camera. So I'm going to hit my camera button here, and I'm just going to set a key on it. That way it'll always jump back to where I'm at. Alright, so at frame 0, I'm going to go in here and just kind of reset Andy into this pose. Okay, and this is nothing that we haven't done before. This is exactly what we did when we did the character poses. This is exactly what we did when we did the walk cycle. It's just we're doing it for the entire body now. And again, I want to make sure that I go through and set up, what do the hands look like? And some of the stuff you have to guess. You can't see, what the hands are doing exactly. The video is a little bit fuzzy. So we just make it up. I'm assuming in this case that if you're about to jump, you have your hands kind of clenched into fists a bit. So I'm just kind of rolling these into little fists. We'll do the same thing on this side. And if you take this, one step at a time, essentially, it's not that difficult to do. It's just a matter of doing the steps in the correct way. Okay, there we go. So if we look at the character here, legs are out like that. The heels are a little bit raised. So let's go in here to heel, foot roll. I'm going to raise the heels up a little bit, just like that, just subtle. Knees are bent slightly. I think that's probably good there. He's leaning forward a little bit. And the hands are definitely further than that away from the body. I actually want to give some indication in the spine, like this, and then have the head looking up. Okay, maybe even the shoulders raised a little bit as well. Actually down, like the way they look down. Up, it looks like she's... There we go. It's kind of in a relaxed pose right now. And just to have a little bit of asymmetry, let's knock this a little bit up higher. I think the hands want to be just a bit more relaxed. I've kind of tensed them up a little bit too much. There we go, like that. Alright, so if I hit S to set my key for Andy, and I rewind this. Alright, somehow my camera got messed up. Oh, I only set rotation keys, that's why. Let's reset that. There we go. So now I should be good. Alright, so there's my first Andy pose. And Maya's trying to think about what it wants to do. So we'll just come over to the video. The whole computer's thinking what it's going to do. Oh, Maya's just going to crash. Okay. Alright, so I'm back. I had to redo the whole thing. Let me save this again. And for speed's sake, or space sake, I just imported the video as an image plane in the background. Just kind of dropped in these planes just to kind of place it a little bit quicker. And then also I think it might be easier to have my Maya full screen than with the video in the background. So I can hit play on here, and I can still see the video, which is fine. That's what I want to be able to do. And I've created my perspective view here, which is the one I would render out of and do all my stuff. It's set up, it's locked. Then I have my perspective 1, which I can actually move around in. Okay, so now I can see, here's where the hand's going to be. Okay, now I can't use this as a one-for-one guide. And you'll see that she is cut off here. That's fine, because I can always back the camera off after I'm done. But if you look at where the hands are, her hands are a little bit higher just because of her proportions. So I have to keep all this stuff in mind, that it's not going to be exact. I'm just using it as a reference for putting it in there. So if it makes it easier, yeah, go ahead and drop the video in. Same thing, image plane, but I went to import movie, and that seemed to work. Okay, let me make sure that our Andy is actually standing on the box. That's what I thought. And let's put it down. There. There. Okay. All right. So I'm going to save this again. Another little thing that you may want to take note of. After I redid my Andy, brought it back in, moved it around, I realized that I didn't set a key when I hit the play button, and Andy jumped back to where Andy was originally. Essentially what I mean is, let's say I went to frame 40 and I'm trying to set up this pose, and I put the arm back here like this. I'm not going to do it quick accurately, I'm just going to do it quickly so you can see it. I put this arm back here, and I spend a good 5 or 10 minutes setting up this pose. Okay, and then I forget to set a key, and then when I jump back to, let's say, 20, Andy jumps back to that pose again. Okay, and I've kind of lost it. I can't undo it. So a quick way to kind of get that back is if you go to the script editor and you try to figure out where it was that you messed up at. So right here where it says current time 40, that's when I set my time to 40. Then everything after that, all the way down to this current time 20, that's when I changed my time to 20, is me positioning Andy in that spot. So if I copied this, Control C, paste it down here where it says Mel, and then I just hit the Enter key on the numeric keypad, it'll put Andy back in that pose, and then I can go ahead and set my key. Okay, I don't need Andy in that pose, but I'm just, as an example, save you some time instead of redoing the entire pose. Alright, so now I'm just going to go through. Okay, we're at about, let's say 14, and our character is basically straightening up. So that's what we want to do, is take our Andy character and straighten him up. Okay, elbows are starting to come up, so we got to bring these elbows down. We got to straighten up the back, so I'm just going to reset those. And raise it up a little bit even. Got to make sure they don't pop. We don't want the knees popping like that. These arms are pretty far out in front. And the elbows are actually out to the side, it looks like. And if it helps at any point, get up out of your chair and get in the pose. See what the arms are doing or what the shoulders are doing. Okay, so it looks like our next pose. So we'll set a key. Oops, and you'll see that this is 14. I wanted to set it at 14. I'm at 15. So instead of left clicking, I'm just going to middle click and drag until I get to 14, and then set my key for Andy. Okay, so we go from here to there. Oh, it's like a frame off. It's kind of weird. That's okay. We'll just use this as this is a frame off. We don't care. I don't know why it's a frame off, but it is. We'll just use the number here at 15 and then set up our Andy for, you know, at frame 15 or whatever it is. I'm sure once we get to the frame, let's see, 165, you see we're still like a frame behind, which is odd. But whatever. Alright, so now let's go and find our next pose. So let's watch the reference here. Right there is our next pose. See, hands are out. And you'll see there's not much of a change from here to here. Okay, the hands come up a little bit, that's fine. So let's go to frame 27, and we'll set the hands up a little bit. Maybe even in a little bit. Okay, set a key there. Alright, so now we're just moving up a little bit like that. And we can come back and adjust these later. But right now we're just kind of setting in the major keys. Alright, so now let's go back. And that looks like a good pose there. So at 36, we got the knees bent. The butt seems to be pretty far back here because the character is bending over. There we go. And let's put a little more bend in the spine. And I'm using, obviously, IK for the hands. But there could be a time where, you know, maybe I get to it, I'm like, you know, I would rather use FK. And I just switch to FK. Okay, head's looking up. Remember, you don't want to leave it all just one joint to do it. Okay, you see I rotated the one, now it looks like Andy's more of like a turtle. So I have to also pull this back some. And let the neck do some work too, pull the head back down. I can pull this forward some. Looking at the reference here, I think we still need a little bit more bending. Remember, we have to kind of exaggerate the movements even further than we typically think they were. We also have to keep in mind that, you know, some things just don't really make a whole lot of sense unless we get into that position and then figure it out. I want the elbows facing up. Oops. Raise the elbow up here. And then the hands would be facing downward. Nope, the hands are facing up. Okay, that's one of those things where, you know, I didn't see it, but I kind of got into that position. Alright, there we go. So I'm going to go back one frame to 36 using the middle mouse, and then set my key. Okay, now we can look at this as we go. Okay, now there is a weird transition here, just because the arms are going basically straight, right? So we'll come back in at another point and fix that. But right now we're just setting up those major poses. Okay, and I think I want to set another pose right here, where he's a little bit more crouchety down. So this is at frame 40 is where this one's going to be. So I'm just going to crouch my Andy down a bit further, bend the spine a bit more. There's a little bit of blur on his hands, so we'll adjust for that. I think I'm also going to pull the elbows out a bit more. There we go. And then always looking at our target. Okay, so we'll set a key here. Oops. I have to go back a frame and then set a key. And then delete that key at 41. Let me see if I can go through this image plane. Yeah, there it is. Frame in 0. Let's see if that fixes it. No. Maybe we can just do an offset by 1 frame. So I just do a -1. Or +1 the other way. There we go. So now we're at 37, 37, 44, 44. There you go. That'll just make it a little bit easier. So I clicked on that camera, attribute editor, went to the image plane, and just added a frame offset of 1. Alright, so there's our pose, our crouch down more. There's our next pose, 49. So, and remember, I never want to touch this big thing here. This is just kind of placement of Andy. That doesn't have any keys on it. All my keyframing comes from these guys. So foot roll's going away. Unless I can figure out a way to do that. No, I think I'm going to use toe roll for that. So let's take foot roll off. And we'll use toe roll. But that's kind of what he's doing there. And I'm glancing over here, but I'm doing most of my setup in this. Okay? And all of these rotations on the spine have to go away. Oops, that's on the pelvis. Wrong one. Spine, spine, spine. There we go. And that way it'll give us a better indication as to where our Andy character should be at this point. Now we can't see his arms, so we just have to, we can see part of them, but not the hands. So we just have to assume what's going on here. Now we're going to have to fix some of these things. There's not going to be a perfect solution. And his head is still looking at the prize. Keeps his eye on the prize. Reset our rotations. Let's raise the hands up a little bit. Let's bring the shoulders up. There we go. That'll let us raise the hands up a bit more, really elongating Andy, making that pose all that more stronger. Okay, and I can see from this view that his hands are actually a little bit off kilter. I think I want the elbows to be on the side here, so let's pull the elbows closer to the side. And this one's doing something weird. I think it just might be locked out. So let's pull it back. There we go. Yep, just locked out. All right. I need to have them straighter, but I have to watch out that they don't lock. Let's raise the head up just a tiny bit. There we go. All right, so set another key at 49. And then, you know, I'm probably previewing this a bit more than you need to, but it doesn't hurt to look at it at every chance you can. It just really gives you a sense of what's going on. Okay. So again, we just go through what's the next pose going to be. It's a hilarious video. And that really helps too if you're working on something that, you know, is actually enjoyable. All right, that's going to be my next pose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this. I'm going to set up a few poses throughout this, and then I'll come back and show you them. You don't need to see me set up every single pose. All right, so I've blocked out all the way till 109, and I'm just going to shorten my clip here to 109 just so we can kind of focus in on that. And now if I hit play while I'm in this view, so we get a nice preview with the audio, and we can see if everything's kind of working. And it looks like most of the stuff is working, but I think this fall here is just happening too short. Like the person's not falling back far enough here. Right there. So what I want to do is adjust some of those things. Okay, also you'll see if I slow it down that my Andy character actually goes through the floor. So obviously this is stuff that we have to tweak in order to get to look correct. Okay, and that's what all these, you know, we set up the poses. The poses seem to be working for the most part, except for, you know, a little bit more room here. Okay, so I need more room right here. So between at 77, I need to move all this stuff down further. So I'm going to go to my graph editor, and I'm going to grab the parts that, you know, I need to adjust. So I know I need to adjust this and the feet, because I know that if I grab those and move them, it'll move the whole rig. Okay. Now I could actually do this in the graph editor, or I could do it out here. But if I do it out here, then all my other keys are not going to update. But the graph editor, I can grab just these in the, let's see what direction it is, Z direction. Translate Z, and translate Z. And if I grab all the ones after this and I just move them, then it'll update the whole thing. Try to move them up or down. There we go. So as I slide them down further, you'll see that Andy is moving further back. So now I'll preview it again and see. That looks much better. Okay, you can see he moves a bit further on that fall. I think even my 72 could probably come back some. Just slightly. There we go. It hits. Oh, probably a little bit too far. Okay, I think I moved a little bit too far still, so let's grab these. Screw it up a little bit. Yeah, it's a constant thing to watch, rewatch. Sometimes it even helps to step away, watch something different, and then come back to it. There we go. Okay, so that's pretty good right there. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go through and just start to add, you know, the in-between stuff that's going to really make this thing kind of sell a bit more. All right. So as we come in, let's look at this view. And in here I'm going to go to show curves and turn the curves off. That way I can just see Andy without any controls on her. So the hands come up. Okay, let's fix that so the hands don't go like this. So we're just going to grab these, pull them down, and straighten them out a bit. Okay, we'll set another key there, and then we'll look at it and see. So we're up here, swoop down, and then come back up. I think even here, I'm going to straighten these arms out some. Now give me a little bit more of an arc to it instead of that, bent elbow. Okay, so let's look at it again. Okay, now we have the same thing happening here. I just have to go through, and again, just make sure that these arms look like they're being arced outward. No, something happened to Andy's wrist. Maybe. Yeah, it's definitely twisted. There we go. For the most part, I want these to be pretty straight, but not locked. Okay, so we'll set another key here. And go in between and pull these back. Okay. Straighten the arms out a little bit more here. I'm going to take the elbows down a touch. And I think even at 50, the elbows are up a little bit too much. Okay, and you'll see some of these things as you go that you just need to adjust. Okay, you just have to be careful you don't, if I put too many keyframes together, too closely together, I'm, kind of locking myself into that pose. Where I'm still keeping this pretty free, where if I needed to change timing or positioning, I could do that. Okay, so let's come into here and check out this view again. Okay, so up to 50, it looks like it's pretty good. Okay, so let's go about there. Let's fix the feet. So I'm just going to reset the toe roll and go into an actual rotation here. Do a little bit of a back arcing here too. a little bit of offset. You know, I don't want it to be perfect. We'll set a key. Comes up. Okay, about here we want these hands to be pretty flat. And if there's something I need to do overall, like if I look at the fingers and I say, oh, those fingers really need to be adjusted or whatever, then I need to maybe possibly go into the graph editor and do it there. Okay, so we'll set a key here after I adjust the feet some more. There we go. Maybe a little bit of head marking down. Okay, and it also helps too to every once in a while play blast it. Let's choose to Maya image from window 1, and then we'll view it inside here. So I just click this window and then hit play blast. Obviously the stuff we haven't adjusted after 55 or so is not going to work. Yeah, it looks like it's working good so far. Alright, so now we'll just keep trucking along. Okay, so we're at 56, 50, 60. You'll see that even like this thing moves a little bit. So I'm going to add that little movement inside here too. It'll just add a little bit of extra oomph to it. So I'm just going to set some keys on here. Actually, let me do it to just the vertices. Switch it to character set off, so I can set a key on that. Scoot it over. And then scoot it back. There's still a little bit of shakiness to it, so I'll add, a little bit of shakiness. Okay, so that's good. So I'll turn my character set back on, go back to object mode, and continue on. Okay, so here he comes, he hits this. Now I want to make sure that it looks like he's sliding here, where our guy looks like it's just going like straight through it. So at 62, I'm basically going to take the feet, hold them up, rotate them back. Let's put the hands out front. He's trying to stop himself from getting hurt. I think it's too late for that. And stuff like fingers, it's always, difficult because you kind of set up these poses and then you realize, I want to, tweak it a little bit more here or there. And so sometimes the graph editor is the easiest way to do it. Like that. And then I think I also want to take Andy, bend him forward a little bit more. Really kind of emphasize that squish there. And Let's try that and see. I'll set a key. So that's good here. Maybe at 65 I want to have these bent just a little bit more. Okay, so let's go to this point. So both shoulders are starting to come up too. And sometimes you'll see something on a second or third or fourth pass that you didn't see before, like the shoulders being up higher. And then again, go in the graph editor and you can start tweaking that kind of stuff in a more global fashion instead of just kind of like one frame at a time. Because what could happen is I set this keyframe, the shoulders come up and then go back down, and that looks weird. Go. So set another key. Okay, that's good. Let's get up to 75, I think. And have a little more arc in that arm. Okay, and then obviously here is where we have to start going through and pulling Andy out from under the floor. Okay. Now I did change the way I was rotating this because I didn't want to rotate this because it would rotate the hands too much, so I decided to rotate that, which just rotates the hips. Okay. So that's obviously, you know, something I have to be concerned about as I go forward adjusting this. Okay, I'm going to make sure my other keyframes are good here. You can see the hands going through. That definitely needs to be fixed. And again, you'll just kind of see these things as you're progressing. The knee's going through the ground, so again, we'll figure out where the knee aim is. There it is. All right, I'm going to reset my key at 89. Okay, so let's see. So it should be pretty flat right there. So let's take our rotator. Bring Andy back to the surface. And see, I'm just doing that with the spine control. And obviously this isn't seen too much, but we still want to make it look good. There's one elbow control. Where's my other one? Right there. I'm also going to rotate another spine joint just to pull Andy up a bit more. Alright, let's try that and set a key. And then we'll go back between and see. There we go. Okay, so he's still going through a little bit at some points. So here, even his elbow right there is going through. So we'll just take this, adjust the elbow, set a key. Here, the knee's coming through, so we'll have to fix that. And a lot of these, it's just a matter of figuring out what control you can grab to do that. So in here, I'm grabbing this to fix it. Maybe I'll actually grab the center one. It's both parts. It's the upper body and lower body that need to be adjusted. And all we're doing is just, essentially we're editing the time of all these things happening. We're just playing with this thing to tweak the time, but we're doing it with keyframes instead of with the graph editor. Once you get more accustomed to using the graph editor and playing with some of these things, then it becomes more of, going the graph editor and tweaking some of this. But at this stage, it's a lot about, what I do to this foot here. Let me just reset the rotates on the foot. And hopefully, I'm going to go the right way with this. We'll find out. But right now we're doing just keyframe animation as opposed to a whole lot of graph editor work. Alright, so I'm going to set a key, and I'm going to watch this foot because it was so twisted. I just have to watch it to make sure it doesn't go crazy. And that's exactly what it's doing, is it's going crazy. If I look at the values here, they're at negative 181, 20, and negative 70. Look at the values here, 94, negative 10, and negative 72. So I actually went the wrong way with this. So let me take this to negative 180. Then kind of position it, then set a key, and then let's watch it again. Okay, now when it gets here, it's freaking out again because of that. So in this case, I am going to go to the graph editor because I need to fix that foot. So I'm going to grab the rotation X, and you'll see there's a huge jump, and that's usually an indicator that you did something wrong. So I'm just going to pull these down here just to get them in about the right spot. See, pretty even, a little bit of movement, but nothing crazy. Same thing here. Just going to pull that down. There we go. And I've smoothed that whole foot out. You see that now it moves much nicer. Okay. Just for fun, let me check the other foot. Usually the feet and the hands is where I see this a lot. Okay. Now this one, this rotate X, not a big deal because it gradually gets to this position. But if all of a sudden this was way up here, that's going to tell me something's wrong. Okay, even here you see this goes from 13 to negative 23 to negative 82, or 92. It's still a gradual transition over some frames. Okay, now I could go through and check that out. That looks like it's at frame 72 to 77. All right, so that might be a little bit too quick movement there. Let's check this out. So 72. Alright, there's nothing wrong with that foot. Okay, there's no crazy rotation happening to it. Everything looks like it's fine with that foot. But sometimes you will see these things kind of spinning around going like extra crazy. Alright, so now we'll go through and just continue along. Hand goes through, so again, just pull it back out. set a key. You don't want to go every single frame. You want to kind of be discreet about setting too many keyframes here. I'm also adjusting the elbow, like that. Okay, now I'm trying to estimate, you know, where would the hand be at this position? Okay, now when we get into this, yes, the hand still is underground. It's going to need to come up. Be flat. There's a little bit of Andy's hair sticking through. I don't care about that. And it's always good to kind of look at from the underside to see what's poking through. All right, here's another shot where this hand's coming all the way through. And it might not even be anything we see until we render it out. The knee's popping through a little bit, so I can adjust that too. Now a lot of this is just you have to go through and just figure out what do I want to do to adjust that. How do I want to fix that? Because you can fix it with you know, several different controls. Which one's going to be the best? And that's going to be just kind of like a playing around scenario. Yeah, see, there's a lot of Andy right here. My best bet, I think, is just to grab this and just rotate him up. See, just pulling that up and then just tweaking some of these other controls. There we go. And then obviously you go through and look at, you know, this is a weird angle for his elbow, so we'll fix that. Again, a weird angle for his elbow. There's even like a weird angle for his leg, but I don't mind it because of the amount he's falling here is really weird. It was really a lot, so it adds to it a bit. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Let me save, because I haven't done that in a while. And let's do a play blast of this. I still see a little bit of timing issue on some of these things. And I can even change my frame rate here and look at this just a bit slower. I just realized that I was playing an F-check, and we have audio. I don't recall ever having audio in F-check. When you see 4 frames a second, I get a real sense of how this thing is moving. There we go. Alright, so for now I'm going to say this is good. Alright, so then now that this is all set up, I'm just going to go to my camera, Control A to get the etch editor, and just turn off the movie by going to display mode, none. Movie's gone. Then I can go through and just adjust some of these other things that I need to, like, you know, the legs are coming through this area here. Let me switch my Andy rig off. So I want to actually, you know, build something a little bit more complex than this. So I'm just going to actually duplicate this one. Oops. Duplicate that one. It's not distorted. I'm going to hide the original one. And I'm just going to do a little bit of modeling on this. Okay, nothing crazy, just a little bit. Okay, and that's going to replace that one as well. One 8 0. There we go. I'm just going to take this side and just scoot it back. And then I'm just going to add some, let's do this one at a time. Create deformer cluster. Same thing on this side. There we go. And now I can just animate these little clusters, just adding a little bit more movement to this thing. So here he goes. Like this. Right there, that push up. I'm just going to add a little bit of movement to it. So I'm just going to wait. See about there, I add some movement. Let's nudge that over a little bit. Okay. Now that I'm seeing this too, it looks like he's, without the other piece of footage there, I like those legs that come up a little bit more. Alright, so we'll fix that after I do that. Okay, so then we'll just animate this kind of wobbling back into place. Okay, I'll do the same thing on this side. Okay, so I'm going to tweak this and I'll come back, or, yeah, I'll tweak this and I'll come back. Alright, so I made some adjustments to the scene, I made some adjustments to Andy. What I did was I picked from my list of, click, 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 there we go. From my list of clothing over here, I chose the boy hair, boy chest, the boy stripes, and then I went into the file for the boy stripes. Look like that, and I just overrode it with, you know, my own texture. Okay, and that's what I did. So I saved it out as a JPEG. Same file name, everything else is all set. I reloaded it into here. So I went and found the boy stripes right there, and just hit reload because it's the same file name. Everything's good. Also take the filter tape off. Good, good. And then under my render settings, I have my quality turned up. I have final gather turned on. I have motion blur set to full. I'll probably add 3 motion steps just to kind of help smooth things out. Maybe 5. There's a couple spots where he's actually, you know, pretty moving around a lot. And Andy failed jump. There we go. As an if, name.number. Start frame is 1, end frame is 109. My camera is now perspective 1, because I changed it. Here is perspective 1 a little bit further back. That way I can see the entire scene. And that's it. So I save, and then I batch render, and then I put it together. I'll probably boost my lights a little bit too before I actually render this. Just for fun, I have 2 lights out here, just so you can see it. And they both are area lights. Intensity's turned up, quadratic. I'm using the light shape. My samples are at 32. Okay, so let me just boost these a bit. There we go, just double them, and that will help. Okay, so I'm just going to batch render this. When you turn it in, you're going to turn in your source file, which is this one. And then you'll also turn in your video file for this. Okay, I don't need your Maya file, I just need your video for this that you make, plus the other one. And then once it's rendered out, I can take this into After Effects and drop the sound, drop this right into that same comp that I saved before. That way I still have the sound for it. Because when I rendered out of Maya, I'm just getting sequences, ifs right here. I'm not getting anything else. So I would take these ifs, drop it in After Effects, get the sound, render it out, good to go. Alright, so that's your character animation.